Howdy y'all, welcome back to Luke's Homebrew. So recently I've been playing a few different one-shots. I played Call of Cthulhu, I have now tried Pathfinder 2nd edition, and myself being a dungeon master for D&D 5th edition for pushing on 5 years now, I've really started to question as I start to divulge into different games, which is the better system. And frankly, is D&D really in decline in comparison to these other systems? So for the 80% of you that click off at 20 seconds, the answer, short answer, is yes. But here's why. So before we begin, I just want to give myself a quick shout out. I do stream on Twitch every Monday and Wednesday. If you want to check me out, please, the link should be in the description. I talk about D&D, I play plenty of video games, so just come hang out. If you want to talk about anything, just leave it in the chat, and I'm more than happy to talk about it. But let's get into the video. So, August 19th, 2014. That was the release date of 5th edition, and it was only about 6 years old. However, if you look at the 5th edition system, you can very easily see that it doesn't have all too much room to grow. I did a video earlier on where I talked about a possible 6th edition that's going to be coming out soon. And I still believe it's going to come out in about a year and a half, 2 years, or they're going to start releasing stuff towards that direction. But the problem is 5th edition is very simple. It talks about advantage and disadvantage. That is the key mechanic beyond just the 6 ability scores and all of that the 5th edition system revolves around. So the problem is it doesn't have a lot of room to grow beyond in just subclasses, main classes, which they haven't even released a main class that's functional except for the original ones that came out in the player handbook, and player options such as magic items and new monsters that come out, which are all pretty easy to develop. But the problem is a lot of subclasses especially have not, they've seemed rather flavorful, but really if you break apart each of the different subclasses, especially for some of the same classes, or maybe like comparing fighter to ranger, they're very, very similar, and it's only a couple abilities. Some abilities are literally the same, copy and pasted. There's just look at the book. I'll see if I can pull up a few examples, throw them up on your screen. But some of the subclasses just don't even compete with one another. Because sometimes they're just the exact same ability. And I think this all kind of revolves around the fact that, unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast, the owners of Dungeons & Dragons, are a subsidiary of Hasbro, and I think since Hasbro, let's just be honest, they're a whole bunch of bobs living up in the ivory tower, they see 5th edition as a cash grab, and frankly, it's been a freaking great cash cow for them. 5th edition is the most popular edition of D&D, and if we're being honest, it's probably because of Critical Role. And props to those guys for getting it off. I watch, or try to watch, every Thursday night. Otherwise, I've kept up to date with all the episodes. But really, 5th edition seems like it is turned into a major cash grab. And I think 4th edition really set the time limit for them to create 5th edition to be very, very short. I think if they were to have waited an extra 2 years to release 5th edition, 5th edition probably would have been a lot better and cleaner. However, I think Papa Hasbro wanted 5th edition out as soon as possible because they saw their numbers were dropping significantly as soon as 4th edition came out. Because I haven't tried 4th edition, but from what I heard, it was not very fun. But now that we've kind of talked about the disparity of the game mechanics as a whole right now, and like I said, really, there's not much room to grow. You can create subclasses, but even then, they're pushing the boundaries of those. And yet again, like I said, some subclasses are sounding pretty much the same. They have some of the same abilities between a cleric ability and a druid ability. A wizard, literally, the druid circle of the land is literally just a wizard in the druid subclass. But let's continue on. So, that's the main market of D&D. That's where all the main books come out of. That's all WotC. Now let's look at the player side of everything. Reddit alone and yes, it's Reddit, but Reddit has the biggest following on D&D. I believe it's D&D Next is the biggest Reddit page, and it shows a huge disparity between what you would call the optimizer or the power gamer and the casual gamer. Just the other day, I read a post describing detail laid out statistics about how a martial fighter doesn't even stand a chance against a spellcaster, simply because the broken nature of the system. And unfortunately, I can't pull it up because it was taken down by the moderators, simply because the post did talk a little bit of shit about the beloved game of D&D, and I think some people took it too harsh. But frankly, I think he was right. I think martial characters don't stand a chance against a wizard or druid, and it's just a numbers game. AoE is always going to be better in single target damage. And unfortunately, the other problem with D&D, especially 5th edition, is because it's so popular, there's a lot of casual gamers, which isn't a problem. However, the system was designed more for the casual gamer. That's how D&D became the most popular role-playing game out there right now, is because it is very simple. It's very easy for someone to pick up a character sheet, fill it out with DM really quick, and know how to play the game. The problem is with a simple system that relies on advantage and has very manipulated, especially the new material. If you look at the Artificer, for example, you can manipulate your AC plus the shield spell to get upwards of 30 AC. And let me just tell you, as a dungeon master who just ran a session, combining a Baylor and a Solar, their stat blocks together gave it 2 additional legendary actions and gave it an extra 200 hit points. I still couldn't hit my goddamn Artificer. I have not hit him this entire campaign. Why? Because, unfortunately, WotC doesn't do the same type of checking anymore because they know their audience is mostly casual gamers. And that's why I think Pathfinder and Call of Cthulhu are rising. But the problem is, power gaming is frowned upon in D&D because it is so easy to do so. With the Artificer, like I just said, if you're looking at any of the new things in Wildmount, God, I love you, Matthew Mercer, but oh my god. Mechanics, dude. Mechanics, please. Thaumaturgist Wizard can cast Lehman's Tiny Hut as an action. I say that again. Thaumaturgist Wizard can cast Lehman's Tiny Hut as an action. Yes. So moving on, I'll let that sink in. The vast majority of people just want to play D&D, and manipulating the system kind of feels bad to those people when power gamer is taking advantage of the Thaumaturgist Wizard or the Artificer, or just using summoning alone because the action economy in 5th edition is broken. It's not the fault of the power gamer or casual gamer, unfortunately, but it's the fault of the mechanics that make it so easy to manipulate your AC. It's the elements of your character that can be so optimized, and just with, honestly, just a little bit of luck and dice on your side, I'm pretty sure an Artificer or a Thaumaturgist Wizard could probably 1v1 a couple very big monsters such as a Baylor, maybe even the rest of the party if they wanted to, if in the hands of an optimizer. And it's unfortunate because, say there is an optimizer, if I allowed multi-classing in my campaigns, which I do, you can multi-class a ranger with a fighter, with a rogue, with a bard, and create the most OP archer in the world. Should be popping up in a video soon about multi-classing, but let's continue on. So, 5th edition, unfortunately, I fundamentally believe is a very broken game. There isn't very much structure or a backbone, and there's a lot of weight set on the DM shoulders to maintain a semblance of balance in the game. However, the DMG does a piss poor job of teaching you how to do that. Xanathar's does a little bit better, but still, why do I need to buy a second book just to be able to do my job best that I can. That's why, yet again, I think the Call of Cthulhu DMG is so much better, because it comes with the player's handbook and the DMG. Everything is laid out for you, all in one book. That way I don't have to spend an extra $60 to be able to play the game to the best of my ability. And I think this is why YouTube tutorials and homebrew content and videos talking about how to play D&D, that's why Matt Colville, DM Tips with Matt Mercer and Satine Phoenix became such big names. Because, unfortunately, the DMG, the player handbook, Xanathars, everything doesn't give a good enough set of guidelines for new DMs in this ever-growing, huge RPG to be able to do their jobs properly. And it takes those people with experience, with better systems, to be able to teach these new DMs how to do their jobs better. And when I first started DMing, I was excited to be able to see how many YouTube tutorials were out there, because frankly, I get the majority of my information from the internet, from YouTube. Even though I'm in school, I could probably learn everything I'm learning in school just from YouTube, but it doesn't get me the $50,000 piece of paper that says I'm smart. So, I didn't realize that, unfortunately, all the homebrew content on DM's Guild, shameless plug, I have content on there, link should be in the description. All the YouTube tutorials that I have put out slightly on my channel, but mostly check out Matt Colville, Matt Mercer, and Satine Phoenix. They do a fantastic job. But I didn't realize that was a symptom of the game just not functioning, and I think the symptom of lack of structure, it's a symptom of the game just being too easy to get into. It doesn't provide very much long-term support for a DM and a play group. But enough said, it's been 13 minutes now. Let's talk about solutions. So the first is just talk to your play group as the DM or as the player. Feel out your group. Do you feel like there's a problem? If all of you are having fun, then you're not having a problem. I recommend maybe try playing different systems just for the fun of it, but if you're having fun, that's all you need. Don't worry about anything else. You can click off the video if you made it this far. But if there is a problem, check out dmsguild.com. Shameless plug. I do have links in the description. Please check them out. The majority of them are free and just very fun content. Otherwise, check out YouTube tutorials to make your game run better. But if none of that is working, because unfortunately the game system is broken, this is my recommendation to you. And this is what I'm going to be doing starting my next campaign. I am probably going to jump ship to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm very impressed with their system. I'm very, very impressed with Call of Cthulhu. And I think Call of Cthulhu is also a fantastic fantasy system too, that you can just implement into your fantasy world. They have vampires, they have werewolves, it's not just hentai. Starfinder is fantastic. Warhammer, I haven't played either of those, but I've heard fantastic things about them. Or just play an older edition of D&D. I hear 4th edition is definitely the greatest edition, so you should probably start with that one. But, all jokes aside, I definitely recommend, if you are having problems with 5th edition like I am, that you jump ship, because I think that's going to be the best thing for the system, and for WotC and Papa Hasbro to realize is, if people start jumping ship to Call of Cthulhu, to Pathfinder, I think they're going to start to realize that printing a scroll of Tarrasque summoning, yes, we all saw that, isn't going to be the solution to keep players invested. It's going to be making a more sound system, a system that provides more tutorial content. And frankly, I think they need to fit all their books into one, because unfortunately for a new DM getting into the game, they need to buy DMG, Monster Manual, Player Handbook, Bolos, Xanathar's Guide. And then if they want to have a pre-written guide, that's another $60. And I would recommend Strahd or Avernus or Waterdeep. But unfortunately, you could start with just a player handbook and you could have a fun time. But if you want all the resources that WotC has presented everyone, you gotta drop about $300. And that's not including minis if you play with minis, not including anything else, not including the dice, not including anything. It's an expensive game, it's an expensive hobby, and I think 5th edition is starting to bleed through the cracks. I know my group is jumping ship, and I know a few other people that are jumping ship. Pathfinder is on the rise. It should be an interesting 1.5 to 2 years, but I think definitely a 6th edition is going to come out soon. And I think the best way to make sure that 6th edition comes out good is for people to kind of realize, especially the optimizers, there's other systems, and frankly they're not as broken. But that's it, everyone. I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did make it this far, please go ahead and leave a like down below. If you did enjoy content like this, check me out on Twitch. I stream every Monday and Wednesday, and then a few other days of the week, just depending on how busy I am. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you next time.